This is a project-based learning space unit we did with TK and K. We started with our motivation, which was clear sections to focus on throughout all of space, with the landing project at the end. We started with the sun, learning about solar energy and how the sun touches each part of Earth and has a different response, which of course turned into some great writing for all different levels that we have. Students that are just learning to write, students that are writing more, and we did some art with it as well. One thing that's been fun with this project-based year is during virtual I did something called Wonder Lesson to kind of get them excited about each lesson we do each day, and I do a little video kind of like, wow. So here's an example of one for the sun.
It's so hot. Oh, it's just, the sun is so bright. Oh, wonder what I could do. What can I do? Can you help me? Do you have ideas? How could I do what I need to do?
So as an engagement strategy, the idea of Wonder Lesson video is to get the students to find out what the essential question is. What's the problem? What are we going to do? So here they are working on Project Lead the Way. And actually took the weather unit of Project Lead the Way, and I just pulled out the solar energy piece so that we could learn about solar energy. And here's what they did. They learned how to make structures to make shade.
Oh, it's the lemonade stand. Perfect. So that's going to cover up your whole lemonade stand. That's going to be the cover of it so you don't melt your ice.
It allowed for all kinds of differentiation with levels with engineering skills. Students could use all kinds of supplies that we provided to learn and really collaborate and work with each other to figure out how in the world they can make shade. And we used the heat lamp to test it. That was our test. We had to bring it over to the heat lamp and see, can shade be made?
So what is this? Oh, there it is. Look at it.
It's just sitting right here.
The sun shining on that side, and does it make shade underneath? What shape? Maybe the triangle design.
So as we finished that, we started moving into stars, and that was fun. You know, solar energy, it ends up that the sun is a star. So that worked really well to go right into stars. We learned that there's 3 different colors of stars, which we didn't know. And we used Graphic Organizer to begin that, trying to pull out the essential information from each color of each star and what they did. So by the end, they had quite a bit of information about stars, which led them into a full writing. So especially for kindergarten, we were in the middle of informational writing from our benchmark unit, and so that allowed us to do a lot of writing. Now, of course, to make stars just fascinating and on fire, we did some fun art with that, which turned into like story writing, which really went well with our standards as well. So we had some fun posing and then using sparkly paper that we put together and using stars, and we traced our pictures of the poses that we made ourselves into a star. And then we learned about constellations. That was really fun because constellations really breed story. So suddenly each one of them had a story, and they're naming their constellation with a story. So that was really just a fun way to encompass so many standards. With stars, we also did some math. So math and reading, actually. So I actually kind of made up a math star thing to measure. So we were measuring stars, but they had to read it. So first they had to read the directions with all the sight words that they knew in the directions, and then they had to do the math of measuring. So that was really fun. Then we moved to moon, which is a great next step. The moon is the closest, thing to our planet, and it was all about the texture and really falling in love with the one place we can actually travel to, and what is it like, and what are the rocks, and how do we make craters. So we had a lot of fun with art and sensory with the moon, learning all the facts. Then we moved on to planets. At this point, their wonder is starting to get peaked. They're very ready, very excited for planets. We used all kinds of posters and books, different kinds of research. We did lots of ways to research so they could go and find out about planets. We learned the order of the planets, the type of planets, what they looked like, how they worked, whether they're too hot, too cold, etc. So they did some modeling with clay and learned all about how to go find their information. Eventually, they started writing it all down and starting to present to each other.
That is Mercury. This is Venus. It's really hot. This is Earth, blue planet. I like Earth because it is friendly. I like Uranus because it's blue. I like Earth because it's beautiful. And I write my name.
And that's an example of a TK student and a kindergarten student, different types of writing and abilities. At this point, our dramatic play center started to really form. We added everything we had learned. We had moon posters and sun posters, and now we're getting excited about rockets, and that started breeding like, when do we get to make rockets? So we started, we had all kinds of paper and supplies to be able to write down what they were learning. So we had an information board, so they were starting to create what they knew about all of space so far, and then they started building. So they were automatically went for the Legos and drawing pictures of the things in space they wanted to learn about and what was next. So all of this just led us into rockets. It was time to blast off. We all love rockets. So this was really fun because the way we did this is we went back to where our essential plan was, and we've really gone through all the things we wanted to learn. So this moved us to space travel. So then we pulled out Project Lead the Way's science unit on forces of motion. So we began to learn about pushes and pulls, which is our standard for kindergarten. So we used iPads to go all around the playground and inside and go and find what's a push and what's a pull. We had to document it and show what we knew about pushing and pulling, and they had to present to the class and present to each other. And then that brought us into the kind of the problem solving project, which was how do you create something that you can pull? So we had this whole design of like, how do you move the rocks from one side of the carpet to the other? And they had to read a story to understand, and they had to build it. They had all kinds of supplies available to them, and it was a really hard project for some, and they had to work together to figure it out, and they had to pass the test to be able to pull an object or push an object to the other side filled with rocks. So this was just so fascinating. They really had time to explore and to create, and they're so proud, and sometimes they really worked as a team to make it happen. They even learned about all kinds of pushes and pulls with the special games that came with PLTW, so they're stoked. As a way to kind of assess learning and self-assess, we did a checklist. So that was fun to see what they thought about the lesson. Then we moved to astronauts. Astronauts is our gateway to travel to space. So this is when we got our iPads out again, and we worked on QR codes that we put on our astronaut, and they could learn about the different parts that are on an astronaut, like different tools they use. So that was super fun for writing. So then they got to really use what they learned from listening and doing their own kind of research to write. Lots of writing about what an astronaut has and why they have it, which all corresponded to how are we going to travel. So then we can make our whole expert space book. At this point, we had so much stuff, they could fill a whole book. So we drew it all on the whiteboard so that they had to plan. Here's your plan: sun, moon, stars, planets. And so they had to go look at all their papers, and they had to put it in order. So this was their kind of agency to do their own book and put it together. Then we had our brochure. This was our ultimate kind of final project. And the brochure had a rubric and a place to write about how their travel was going to go. What tools do they need? How are they going to get there? They had to present it to each other and explain it to each other and pull out the things from their book that made the most sense to prove their points. So it was a full expression of the project base. So then they started recording it so that they could explain exactly how they got there and what they were going to use to get there. Just really show all the information that they knew about space. Why can they go to what planet? Then we used QR codes, and we had a great time with those because they could record it and then send it to their families. Woohoo!